Hello, Professor Kent Lee here. Welcome back to this video series on using sources. In this video, I'm going to talk about some other problems that students have with using sources. In the last video, I talked about plagiarism. In this video, I'm going to talk about another problem that students have, and this is true for students using English as their first language, like American college students, or it could be students using English as a second language or whatever language they are writing in when it comes to college papers. So with plagiarism, you get some source and you copy and paste the words, maybe don't change it, maybe you make minimal changes, and it's still apparent that you're using the words or ideas or information from somebody else, and or you don't cite it. Or maybe you cite it, but you're still using these words and pretending they're your own words by not changing them, paraphrasing and summarizing them enough. And one reason we do paraphrase and summarize is you want to integrate the ideas or information from your source into your own paper. You have to integrate it, synthesize it, put it together. Let's say I'm writing a research paper about student motivation, and I will cite maybe a study by some famous researcher on motivation in education, college education. I'm going to change the wording enough that I combine it with my own ideas. Like in this paragraph, I've got my own ideas that, for example, Korean college students, when it comes to English learning, they have this kind of problem with motivation, and I cite a source. I'm going to briefly cite the key idea from that source, from that other study by some famous scholar. I'm going to change the non-essential words. I can't change, everything. I can't change motivation. I mean, that's just a common word, or a technical word like the name of a statistical procedure, kind of statistical method that person did or that I used also in my research. Can't change that. That's a technical term I can't change. But other stuff, other words, I can change. Other kind of common words, common nouns and verbs and adjectives, I can change, rephrase things, and distill it down just the basic idea. And say in one sentence or two sentences, I summarize the main idea from that source that's relevant to what I'm saying in this paragraph. I integrate the information in the source, I reword it, and then I put it into my own flow of thought, my own paragraph. It is my own paragraph where I have mentioned what somebody else did or found or said on this topic. I've integrated it. And I've not only paraphrased it, but of course I've cited the source using a proper source citation system. Now, a problem that students have who are not used to academic writing is this. They go on Google, or in Korea, maybe they go into your Naver search engine or whatever search engine you use in your country. They go to Google, maybe Google Scholar, and they get all these sources on this topic, and they try to cite all of them. And they change the wording. Maybe they paraphrase everything appropriately. Maybe they paraphrase and summarize everything appropriately. And they appropriately cite the source every time. But they cited so many sources that it's like an information dump. They've just dumped a lot of information from sources. So we call this kind of source use trawling. Some writing teachers call it trawling. So trawling is literally a kind of fishing. You have a fishing boat and it puts down this big net, and this net scrapes up everything from the ocean floor and everything it catches on the way up, or it just scoops everything up in the water, and you bring this big net into the boat, and the fishers, the workers in the boat, they go through it and they sort through it. And we don't want that. They throw it back in the ocean. We'll keep that. We can sell. Here's a nice big fishy. We can sell that. So they pick out the good stuff and they throw everything back into the ocean. It's trawling. So trawling in writing is where you go to Google and you just get all these sources. Maybe you've got a dozen sources you found in a Google search, and you cite and paraphrase each one of them. It's like, okay, one sentence, here's a source, another sentence, here's a source. But you've just cited a bunch of sources with minimal effort. You've dumped them in your paper. There's no sense of, okay, why are all of these together in your paragraph? What is your idea? I mean, in this paragraph, what are you trying to convey? What is your main idea? You should be using these sources to develop and support your ideas, not just to dump a bunch of information. It's not just like a history of what other people have said about this subject or what other people have done. It's to develop your own idea. And so instead of trying to find every single source, you should find the best, the most relevant, maybe the most recent ones or the most important ones about the topic. Or if you can't, maybe your topic is too broad. It's maybe too broad for one single paper. You might think about either narrowing your topic or just focusing on the sources that are the best, the most relevant. Otherwise, you end up with this one sentence cites a source. So-and-so did this study and found this. 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 So-and-so did... Okay, you get the idea. It's boring, right? Maybe you go into a lot of unnecessary detail about, okay, how they did the research, or they recruited 216 subjects from high school. And, who cares? That's not relevant. You want to focus on the main idea. What's the main idea or finding of some of these sources? Don't focus too much on all the minor details and summarizing how they did the research. That may not be important for most of your papers if you're a college student, exactly how they did the research. Brief summary of what kind of study they did. Oh, they did a survey study, they did interview studies, they did like a teaching study, and they found this. Okay, what is it that they found? Give us the main idea, the gist, and then comment on it, say something about it. So-and-so did the study, a teaching study, and found that this worked. And then so-and-so did a study like this and found that this worked. So these studies tell us that, blah, blah, blah. What's your take on it? Give us your interpretation or your analysis, or what does it say about your idea? Or contrast and compare. They did this, but I disagree because why? Or so-and-so said this, but in this paper, I want to argue to the contrary because why? Say something about it. And sometimes students give like direct quotations and they cite the source. Okay, technically that's legal. They're doing what is legally correct. Direct quotes to indicate you are copying the exact words and then citing the source, including the page number. That's technically correct, but why are you doing that? Don't just plop down quotations into the text and then move on. That's kind of lazy. That's also sort of like trawling. Just plopping something down in the text and moving on. Paraphrase it, summarize it instead. Or if you're going to directly quote somebody, do it if it's important, if the way that they said it is actually meaningful or important. The exact words, the way that they said it, exactly what they said. If that is meaningful, then quote it, direct quotation, citation, and then comment on it. Don't just plop it in your paper and move on. If you have a direct quotation, say something about it. Give some interpretation, connect it with your own thoughts, something. Don't just plop it down and move on, but say something about it. Same is true for if you're citing, reproducing somebody's table or chart. Don't just dump that in your paper. If you're not going to actually explain it to us in the paper, don't put it in there. You can instead just summarize it in words. Okay, because reproducing a table or chart or graphic, it's just like a direct quote. You should cite the exact page that it came from, and then you should explain it or comment on it or interpret it or say something about it before you move on. Otherwise, cut it out or paraphrase it. So these are problems that students have. Even students who are native English speakers at a North American university who are not used to academic writing, but these are problems to watch out for. So if you notice that in your papers, go through, revise them, change them, paraphrase them, cut out sources that are not really necessary if you have too many sources. Because when you have too many sources and it looks like you've just, like Google has vomited all over your paper, you've got all these citations in your paper and you've got all these citations in the in references or the works cited. That's like citation bling. So bling is a slang term, or bling bling is a slang term for the kind of heavy, showy jewelry that hip-hop stars, hip-hop singers wear. Like I got all these gold rings and these heavy gold necklaces. It's bling. That's just citation bling. We have no idea what you're trying to say. What are your ideas? A paper is about your ideas. What are your arguments? What's your thesis? What's your interpretation, your analysis? The reader wants to know your ideas, not an information dump of stuff that's just vomited up from Google, like a Google vomit. You know, Google got sick all over your paper and just threw up. Okay. Readers don't want that, and teachers and professors don't want that. They want coherently developed ideas, including explanation of the sources that you're citing and why. Okay, why are you citing this? So those are traps to watch out for when you're using sources and you're writing college papers. Hope this helps. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care and goodbye.